your tuxedo.
Well, for those of you who joined us last week, you know that we started a new sermon series on Sabbath, and that in addition to opening up the scriptures and looking what the scriptures teach us about Sabbath, we're going to be having people come up and share their testimonies with us about their practice of Sabbath. Carrie Bear did a great job kicking us off last week and opening up the importance of Sabbath to her and that of someone that she was able to bless with the concept and the impact that has made on their life. Well, this morning, I'm going to invite up Topher Fox. And if you don't know Topher Fox, I encourage you to get to know him. He's a phenomenal human being. He's also been at Grace Commons for about 20 years. He's married to the lovely Jenny Fox, who also grew up here in this church and is currently serving as an elder on our session. Topher is a dad of two. Ryan is a senior at Fairview, and Maddie is a sophomore at School of Mines. Topher, during the week, is an endocrinologist. He has a practice in Superior. And Topher really does enjoy the out of doors, I've gathered. Often you'll find him skiing or biking or maybe more recently walking two dogs while listening to a podcast. If you ever need a recommendation on podcasting, this is your guy. He spends much time doing that. Anyway, he is here this morning to share with us, and we're so grateful for that. So let's just jump in and get started, if that's okay. So grateful for who you are and all that you do. But wonder, in addition to these things that he does, he's helping partner on this effort of discipleship and spiritual formation. So cares deeply about Christ being formed in us and has been spending some time looking at that. But personally, I'm just curious, when or why did you start practicing Sabbath?
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. So I'll just start to say it's kind of an honor to be up here and a little bit nerve-wracking, I think, just because my role I see as like a regular guy. What does it look like when we're challenged to practice Sabbath and then try to put it into place? And so this is supposed to be this week and then over the next 5 weeks, not really the Instagram version of Sabbath, but more like the real life version. So my wife, Jenny, and I, probably like a lot of you, just have this sense, or we had this sense, we still have it, that our life is too busy, there's too much going on, and we're always running from thing to thing. And together about a year ago, we read a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. It's a Dallas Willard quote, John Mark Comer book, and in that book he talked about Sabbath among a number of other practices. And shortly after that I heard about this thing called a rule of life. It's kind of an interesting phrase. It's got a really cool Latin word that's the root, but it basically is this idea that in our lives we all essentially have a way that we make decisions. And whether we know that we have this or not, we all have one. And we can either be intentional about trying to set this up, or we can just let it happen by accident. And by accident really means we're influenced by the ways of the world. And so last May, I decided that, gosh, I really want to try to be more intentional about my rule of life. And so Sabbath was one of two practices that I started doing, basically to say, hey, I want to open myself up to the work of the Holy Spirit.
So what did you start doing? How did it go?
Yeah, so, I think that maybe we could look back a little bit and say, what was Sunday like before starting? And probably like many people, we always felt like Sunday was a day to come worship, and so we would try to get here with our family, but then really the rest of the world would kind of crowd in, and so Sunday was also a day to catch up on the tasks that didn't get done during the week, or maybe laundry, or other home projects. It was a busy day. And in studying the Sabbath, I think have come to view it in this way, that there's kind of this turning away from and a turning toward, that we turn away from the ways of the world. So there's certain things that Jenny and I have tried to stop doing. And so for me, that list, I try not to worry. I try not to think
about...
How's that going? It's good. Sometimes I have to hand stuff over to the Lord a lot during the day. I really don't want to focus on this today, but try not to worry. No shopping, no projects, no business, no email, no surfing the internet. So there are a bunch of things that go away, and then turning toward is really to say, hey, God, what do you have for me today? And it's really kind of joyful to have this whole day of, like, I just want to spend time with you, Lord, and that might look like prayer or worship, being in community, gratitude, looking for ways that we're blessed, being intentional about that. I've started doing some journaling, which is something I've always wanted to do but never have. So I kind of like that turning away from and turning toward.
So do you have like a time it starts or any ritual with that?
Oh, yeah, good, thank you. And I think this is important. So we try to do a 24-hour rhythm, and Jenny and I, we start Saturday night. And one of the really joyful things that's come is it's become a really sweet time. So on Saturday, to get ready for Saturday night, there's a lot of things, we kind of find ourselves running around trying to get all the stuff done so that we can actually practice the Sabbath. Like, that preparation is important. But we just have a simple meal. We usually light some candles. We have a cocktail together and then eat dinner together, and typically have kind of a quiet evening together. But it's become really a joyful time.
Have you noticed any other fruit that has come maybe as a result of you carving out this time? Maybe not during, but after. Has it changed anything that you notice?
I think the two things that really I've noticed, in addition to becoming much closer to my wife, as she and I, we're not always in sync, but we've kind of tried to come aligned as we do this practice together. I just have more of a sense of the Lord during the week and his presence at work or at home, just day to day. And the other is I've had a chance really to talk to other people who are doing the same thing, trying to institute this practice of Sabbath. And so there's this sense of community, that we're this body of people that have said, hey, we want to be disciples of Jesus. Well, let's do that. Let's practice it, and let's talk about it together. And that's been really good. So I'm part of a small group of a bunch of middle-aged guys like me that I've gotten to know and become a little bit closer to, and chatting with folks who have been doing common space groups. Sabbath was a theme for that in the fall. And so it's just been really lovely to, I think, have that sense of community in this body grow.
Okay, that's all a little bit Instagram, though, because it's like, rainbows and good times. Has it been hard? What challenges have you?
Yeah, challenges. So this is, challenges. I think that it's easy to think that, you hear people talk about Sabbath and how great it is, that it should be just super awesome all the time. And then as you get into the practice and it's not, I kind of wonder, am I doing it wrong? There must be something wrong with me. But definitely there's been plenty of days where I've had a lot of feelings of sadness that have kind of come up during the day, feelings of loneliness that have come up during the day. And probably the biggest, call it resistance for me, is that honestly there are some days where I just don't feel like it. It's Saturday afternoon and I think, oh man, it's going to be Sabbath. I don't really even want to do it. It just sounds like too much, it's too much work. And, I think Jenny and I have tried to be faithful to say, well, we're just going to try to work through that and keep going. But no, it's not always easy.
So you say sad and lonely. That feels a little surprising as a description of what it might be. The resistance and not wanting to do it makes sense. Any examples of how we could understand what's sad or lonely about it?
It's interesting that as I've tried to learn and listen to podcasts for people talking about Sabbath, there was a term that came out that was Sabbath sadness. There was a pastor who was talking about this.
Wait, say that again?
Sabbath sadness.
Sadness.
She was talking about this as a thing, and it was funny because she said it, and it's like, oh, I totally get what that is. And it's hard for me to describe other than, I think some days if I'm by myself and I've created all this space, maybe it's that feelings that we ordinarily have that we've kind of pushed down during the week, they sort of come up. And perhaps the Lord wants to help us work through those, and we're supposed to sort of hand those over or say, hey, Lord, what's going on in this? I can't say that I have a brilliant answer to that. It's still a work in progress. I think loneliness in particular, Sabbath is countercultural to the world. We live in a world that doesn't Sabbath. And so I think sometimes trying to unplug, if you don't have a community that's kind of unplugged with you, that can feel very lonely.
So have you felt like God has met you in those places? Or, is there any other fruit from going through that?
I will say he is meeting me in those places. So I'm more comfortable, I think, in those moments to say, I don't know what's here, but I think I'm going to sit in this and try to just let those emotions happen rather than trying to hide them or push them down or push them away. I can't say he's fixed me yet.
Not yet? Okay. Sorry, Jenny. Work in progress. So I wonder if you might share any tips or tricks you might have for anyone who might be ready to start or would be willing to try a Sabbath practice.
Sure. I think the biggest thing, and I was kind of laughing, so this second row right here, before the children's sermon, there were like 7 kids in that row. And I think that there's this idea that Sabbath is all about this set of rules, right? And we learn in the Bible that the Pharisees and the Hebrew culture made it this way, and Jesus came and said, no, that's not what we're supposed to do. That it can be very easy to make it about all the rules, all the things that I do. And so I was thinking about you all, that what Sabbath looks like for parents of young families, right? If you're carrying a ladybug backpack, it's probably going to look different than if you are, coming here by yourself or you're carrying a cane. But really the 2 things I think are just to start, like, do something, set aside some time. It could be 24 hours, it could be 6 hours, it could be 4 hours, maybe it's an hour before your kids get up, I don't know, but do something to set aside that time and devote it to the Lord and see what happens. And then the second thing would be, ideally, I would pray that each of you has a friend or maybe a group of friends, a small group that you can process that with, talk about what it's like and share, like, oh, Sabbath sadness. Like, I feel like I'm doing it wrong, but that's apparently a thing. It's okay to feel that, and let's talk about what that's like together. And I hope and pray that will continue to foster the sense of community in the church that we have here.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for that. For all of you, there's a resource page on the website that has things you can watch, things you can listen to, things you can read. There's 8 weeks if you wanted to get a friend or a group of people to travel through how to do this, and there's guidelines there. There's a companion guide that we used in Common Space Group, and we can make that available to you as well, and it'll take you from day 1 all the way through the practices, and there's videos that can help you. So would encourage you just to start small, and find a way to start experimenting with how to put more Sabbath rest in your life. Thank you so much, Topher, for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Good.